Gurmagov, Cohilach agus Gnuishla. The presidency of Ireland has moved in recent times from a passive, just like the microphone, from a passive role to an active one. Ireland now expects that the president be a symbol of hope, a catalyst for change, an influencer of thought, a force for the future. We have seen just how effective the presidency can be in good times. Now it's our opportunity to see how effective it can be in bad times. These are not the best of times. They're certainly not the worst of times. Yes, we face economic challenges and we shoulder a huge debt. The core of the problem is that we stand surrounded by the wreckage of our high expectations. The evidence suggests that those expectations were not rooted in reality, perhaps not rooted at all. That appears to be the core of the problem, that what we built had poor foundations. I seek the presidency, having held many public offices, MEP, TD, Minister for European Affairs, Lord Mayor, and each of these has informed and shaped me. But what most shaped my outlook about Ireland is what I experienced and saw growing up. My father died when I was 5. He left me with just a few fading memories. When he died, my mother was 47. She was left with 9 children, one of them with a profound intellectual disability. My mother went to work at 4 in the morning, cleaning offices. That way she could come home in time to get us all to school. Because school mattered. School, faith, and family. They were what mattered to her, and because they mattered to her, they mattered to us. They were tough times, but there was no compare and contrast. We had nothing to compare our lives with, nothing to envy. We created our own role models. One of my sisters was a second mother to me. I was the second youngest, and she surrounded me until her untimely death with a love and a warmth that was one of the great certainties of my life. Tough times form you or they fray you. They formed me and filled me with an ardour, an energy to fight and change things for the better, to never ever accept false limitations. Dylan Thomas wrote a poem about death that applies just as readily to life. Rage against the dying of the light, he says. I've always raged against the dying of the light. The dying of the light of fair opportunity in education, of self-reliance, mutual reliance, and mutual respect, because each is crucial to the creation of a decent society. That ardour, that energy, was what brought me into politics, and I'll never be ashamed of it. Without a passion to change things, politics boils down to nothing but personal ambition. Never was a passion to change things for the better more needed than right now. Never was a passion to change things for the better more relevant to the presidency of Ireland. Our president must be a symbol, an inspiration. A symbol and an inspiration for the people who go to work in farms, offices and factories, the ones who wake up in the middle of the night doing sums of survival in their heads, the ones looking after elderly parents, the ones seeking to ensure that their children get a good education and do not fall prey to the dangers confronting them in modern Ireland, such as those posed by drugs of all sorts, including alcohol. Those who feel cut off, living on their own in rural and urban Ireland, with little, if any, human contact, living in fear that they will become the next random victim of crime. The ones who, against all the odds, still manage to dream dreams and hold on to hope. The presidency can serve the people in new ways, as Presidents MacGill and Robinson have shown. They demonstrated that the role can be used with imagination, that it stands outside the body politic, but can inform the thinking of the nation and raise the spirits of the people. Then it can and must respond to the needs of the time. We spent the last couple of years looking back at the boom times, which allowed us to transform the country. We built roads and bridges, industrial plants and educational institutions. We grew in confidence. But there were also downsides to the boom years. As a society, we lost faith in those years. faith in something bigger than ourselves. Instead of measuring people by what they were and how they contributed, they were measured by possessions and position. Shockingly, and very sadly, some of the brightest and best of our young people, and some not so young, were spun loose and were lost to suicide. Why? Was it in part because we failed to build an inclusive society? A society where everybody feels they belong, they matter, they count? I suggest that what we built was a politically correct society, a nearly inclusive society, one in which we know the words but have yet to learn the tune. A truly inclusive society is one where you're equally welcome no matter who you are, no matter where you come from or who your father was, no matter what the colour of your skin or your political beliefs, no matter whether you're gay or straight, a believer or an atheist, employed or unemployed. In the boom years, some in our society became very arrogant, as has already been said. They lectured others here and abroad, and if only everyone did as they did, all problems could be solved. Alternative voices and approaches were decried. Those who expressed concern as to where the then economic orthodoxy, with its dependence on the property boom, was leading, were dismissed and told to stop their unpatriotic behaviour. An inclusive society is one where the views of all are respected, whether liberal or conservative, in favour or against European treaties, supportive or opposed to current approaches to address our banking and economic difficulties. It's time for a pretend-free, really inclusive society, a mosaic reflecting the sum of all its parts, not a stew where everything is boiled down to a few. But I'd go further. An inclusive society starts at parish level, at local community level. It starts with that simple, wonderful sense that someone is looking out for you. As I outlined, I've held many public positions in my time, but one of the most memorable was in my teens and 20s when I was president of the St. Vincent de Paul Council for Youth Clubs. To me, that was one of the most memorable for two reasons. Firstly, I met my wife Norma at the meeting of the council. I'm not so sure it's still as memorable for her. Second, I was working within a community of people who understood the value of volunteering, who knew that by giving you receive. It's in that kind of youth movement that the seeds of a great future lie. It gives young people a chance to work in teams, to share, to respond to the needs of others, to get that fulfilling sense of quiet achievement when you know that you've made a difference. Each of us can make a difference, and much can be achieved in the teeth of trial and exaltation. Kipling writes of meeting with triumph and disaster and treating those two impostors just the same. But triumph and disaster did not take away our humanity. There is still compassion and generosity that fuels this country's response to need in the developing world, and as we speak, leads people who have no money to find some to send to Concern, Trócaire and Gael and others to help in the stricken children of Somalia. This generosity is a foundation stone we can build on. We can rage against the dying of the light of possibility. We can have a fierce faith in the future and a passionate belief in Ireland and its people. And yes, we can put that faith and energy to work through the presidency. We can promote a society built on really solid foundations, not one that will crumble at the first test. The continuing economic challenges we face also present us with an opportunity to reflect on how we got here, how to get out of some of our difficulties and where we want to go to from here, how best to serve the welfare of the people. The President puts his or her hand on the Bible and swears to uphold the Constitution and the law and to serve the welfare of the people of Ireland. I'm not an ideologue, but I do believe in an ethos, a foundation for society, based on four interrelated principles: rights, responsibilities, enterprise and social justice. I want to rekindle Declan Costello's philosophy of a just society and to promote real unity and diversity. That is how I propose to serve the welfare of the people. The recent death of Declan is a reminder, if we needed one, that the objective of a just society was once a burning hope in the hearts of many Irish people. I want to rekindle that hope. For some, this will sound like soft sentimentality. The problem is we've become too cool. We've lost our sense of awe and wonder. We need to return to a society based on principles, a less harsh and a more merciful society. Yes, there is something broken, and I believe the ethos I am proposing has the potential to help us repair that damage and to become not just more ethical and happier, but also a more gentle society. A republic which nurtures a just society is one, in my view, where the principles of rights, responsibilities, enterprise and social justice are intertwined. It's easy to talk of rights and social justice, but rights bring with them responsibilities for ourselves and others. Social justice through accessible education and health, for example, can be provided only if the enterprising spirit is encouraged so as to create the wealth to pay for these services. This is not a question of unregulated greed. We can see where that got us. There must be rules for enterprise to thrive. My idea of enterprise is that a person who by the sweat of his or her brow makes a real effort, that person should harvest the product of what they have sown, thus giving incentive and encouraging innovation. My idea of a just society is one in which the fruits are used to ensure opportunity through universal access to education, and one where the weak and old and the less able and needy are looked after. A tolerant and inclusive society is one that respects difference. That tolerance has to extend to our fellow Irishmen and women north of the border. Some of them are nationalists and some unionists. You can be Irish, Irish and British, or Irish and European. We have to learn mutual respect. From my studies of Irish politics at Queen's University, Belfast, I really believe that we can do much more if we put our hearts into it and respect our differences. The Africans have a saying, if you want to go fast, run on. If you want to go far, let's walk together. 60 million people died in the first half of the last century. We've learned to live in Europe alone. We've learned to live together in Europe. It's not a perfect place, and you can see that some mistakes have been made. But you can also see in the last week, by tenacity, by networking, by knowing what to do, by turning up, by ensuring that you negotiate sanely for Ireland, you can make a real difference. The deal we got last week didn't happen last week. It took weeks and months to put that together. In conclusion, Chairman, may I say that I was struck by a sign I saw recently in the grounds of a Presbyterian church. It quoted St. Francis of Assisi as telling his followers to go and preach the gospel and use words if you must. Words are important, but it is by our own efforts and witness that we can make Ireland a place where we not only prosper, but where we are happier as a society, not just because we are governed by principles, but because we are governed by principles that work. A society of rights, responsibilities, enterprise, and social justice. A just society. Thank you very much.